What if the moment that silenced the courtroom wasn't a confession at all, but a warning? When YNW Melly stood up in front of the judge, trembling and pale, his words sent a chill through the entire room. Jurors froze, pens dropped, and even the bailiff looked stunned. After 6 long years of silence, rumors, and stalled trials, Melly finally spoke. And what he said didn't just shake the case. It cracked open something much bigger. Was this guilt spilling over? Or was it the first glimpse into a deeper cover-up the system never wanted us to hear? And that's where the story takes its sharpest turn. The room was heavy, the kind of silence you can feel pressing against your skin. Then, out of nowhere, Melly stood up. No prompting, no warning. He turned toward the judge, his shackles rattling, and whispered, "I need to tell the truth." Finally, for a second, nobody even breathed. A juror covered her mouth. Another leaned forward like they just misheard. The gallery shifted in their seats, waiting for the punchline that never came. This wasn't performance. It was raw, cracked open, unpolished. And what came next left everyone stunned. Melly didn't just apologize. He didn't just admit guilt. He named names. He spoke about fake evidence, planted witnesses, and a setup that stretched far beyond the night of the murders. He wasn't begging for mercy. He was throwing gasoline on the fire. The judge's eyes locked on him, expression unreadable, like he was staring at a man unraveling before his own eyes. But to the families in the room, it wasn't closure. It was confusion. Was this the long-awaited confession, or a carefully timed move to flip the script on the entire trial? Because if Melly really meant what he said, then the courtroom wasn't just hearing the truth. They were stepping into a war, and that was only the beginning. 2 nights before that courtroom explosion, something strange surfaced online. A shaky audio file, grainy, muffled, but the voice, unmistakable. Fans swore it was Melly. In the clip, he confessed to something dark, something heavy enough to flip the entire case. The internet went into meltdown. Half the crowd said it was real, proof that he was guilty all along. Others screamed it was a setup, that he was coerced, that someone edited his voice to frame him. Forums lit up. Twitter threads stretched for miles. TikTok lawyers were breaking it down frame by frame like it was the Zapruder film. By the time Melly walked into court that morning, the damage was already done. His eyes looked hollow, his voice shook, and the leak felt like the shadow following him into that courtroom. Suddenly, the trial wasn't just about what happened in a car 6 years ago. It was about leaks, manipulation, and a digital crowd already taking sides. And just when the world thought the story had reached its breaking point, the courtroom revealed something even stranger. If the leaked audio wasn't enough to shake people's trust, what happened next made the courtroom feel like a thriller script playing out in real life. During a routine evidence review, a sealed envelope was accidentally displayed just for a split second. Inside, text messages pulled from a burner phone allegedly tied to Melly's crew. And these weren't casual messages. They talked about clean exits, dead weight, and one chilling warning: don't let Jamal talk. He's soft under pressure. The room froze. Was this proof of a setup? Or was it evidence that the case ran deeper than anyone thought? Even prosecutors looked rattled, and when the envelope was yanked away, it only fueled more questions. If this was real, why hadn't it been presented sooner? And if it wasn't, why was it sitting in a confidential file at all? Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Was this about Melly or about protecting someone else? Fans online were quick to claim it was a cover-up, pointing fingers at everyone from prosecutors to people in Melly's own circle. Because if those texts were genuine, then maybe Melly wasn't the only one with blood on his hands. And just when people thought the evidence couldn't get any messier, the defense pulled out something even stranger. A letter that no one could agree was real. When the defense rose to speak, no one expected what came next. They held up a document, handwritten, emotional, and allegedly penned by Melly himself, just days after the murders. A so-called confession letter. The courtroom gasped. For the prosecution, it was the smoking gun. For the defense, it was a setup. Melly's own mother shook her head, whispering, "That's not his writing." But the damage was done. Jurors leaned in. Cameras zoomed. For a moment, everyone believed they were staring at the raw truth of the case. But then, the whispers began. Online sleuths compared the letter's handwriting to old fan autographs. The curves didn't match. The pressure points looked off. And then came the bombshell. A whistleblower on Reddit claimed the letter wasn't written by Melly at all. According to him, the state had access to AI handwriting simulation software, tools that could mimic a person's style with eerie precision. He even posted metadata logs from a county printer that didn't line up with the timeline of the letter's creation. Suddenly, the so-called confession didn't look like evidence. It looked like forgery. And in a case already drowning in accusations of corruption, this was gasoline on the fire. But the twists didn't stop there. Because right after that letter made its rounds, a new audio clip leaked. And this one didn't just hint at guilt, it hinted at a plan. Just when the courtroom thought it had seen enough drama, another twist hit like a grenade. Out of nowhere, an audio clip surfaced online. Grainy, shaky, but the voice sounded just like Melly. In it, he muttered words that froze fans to their screens. "I ain't going out like no dummy, I got one move left." The internet erupted instantly, thousands of reposts within hours. TikTok analysts slowed it down, spliced it with his old interviews, and declared it authentic. Others weren't buying it, calling it AI-generated, a deepfake designed to make him look guilty. And while the prosecution dismissed it as unverified and possibly digitally altered, that didn't matter. Public opinion had already shifted. Once a clip goes viral, it doesn't need proof. It just needs clicks. But here's where things got even darker. Around the same time the clip leaked, jail surveillance footage mysteriously vanished. Officials claimed it was a system glitch, but the missing footage just so happened to be from the exact night the audio was supposedly recorded. Coincidence? Fans didn't think so. The outrage was immediate. Meek Mill tweeted, "They playing with a man's life like it's a movie script." Cardi B reposted it with a prayer emoji and the caption, "The justice system scary AF." Even casual fans who never followed the case suddenly wanted answers. Was Melly being framed? Or was this the most poorly hidden cover-up of the decade? And then came the breaking point. A retired prosecutor went on a podcast, admitting the Melly case had been flagged internally months ago for potential misconduct. She didn't name names, but hinted that certain detectives were already under review for tampering with evidence. That single interview turned suspicion into fire. If cops were under investigation, how could anyone trust the so-called glitch? By the end of the week, mistrial motions were flying, social media was in flames, and the trial had turned into a circus. But the scariest part wasn't the letter or the audio clip or even the missing footage. It was the emotion. Because for the first time, Melly himself stood up, trembling but clear, and said, "They've been trying to bury me before I even had a chance to speak. So now I'm speaking." The courtroom erupted. The judge tried to calm the chaos, but the damage was done. Whether you believed him or not, one thing was clear. Melly wasn't just fighting for his freedom anymore. He was fighting to survive the storm. And survival, as it turned out, was about to take on a whole new meaning. For weeks, the trial had been painted as one man against the system. But whispers behind the scenes told a different story. According to sources close to the case, Melly's breakdown in court wasn't about guilt. It was about fear. Rumors began swirling of a second shooter that night. Someone who wasn't on trial. Someone Melly had allegedly protected for years. This mysterious figure, people said, wasn't just another friend from the neighborhood. He had ties to a much larger network, one powerful enough to reach into the courtroom itself. And according to speculation, that person had flipped, threatening to trade Melly's freedom for their own immunity. The theory gained traction after a sealed court document was accidentally projected on the big screen for only a few seconds. Sharp-eyed reporters caught blurry photos of it before the clerk yanked it down. On the page, 3 potential co-defendants, names redacted, one circled in red. Nobody knew who they were, but the internet didn't wait. Was it an old manager? A rival inside the label? Or someone higher up pulling the strings the whole time? Neither the prosecution nor the defense would comment. The judge refused to even acknowledge it. But the silence only fueled the fire. Online, fans swore this was proof Melly wasn't acting alone. Others argued it was a desperate distraction. Either way, the message was clear. The case wasn't as simple as the headlines made it seem. And that's when things turned from suspicious to terrifying. Because the next move wasn't in the courtroom at all. It came in the form of a threat. The trial was messy enough, but what happened next pushed it into nightmare territory. Hours after court recessed, Melly was abruptly moved into isolation. Officials claimed it was for his own safety, but insiders whispered a different story. According to those close to the case, Melly had received a folded note. No one knew where it came from, passed in court, slipped during transport, or planted in his cell. But what mattered was what it said. Some say the message was only 3 words. Next time, don't speak. Others claim it held something even more chilling. Coordinates tied to the original crime scene, a place never mentioned in court. The weight of it hit him hard. Witnesses say he read the note, went pale, and collapsed. And almost immediately after, he was whisked into isolation. Protection, they said. But protection from who? That same night, an anonymous Instagram account went live. The screen showed nothing but a shadowy figure in a mask, voice distorted. The figure leaned in and said, "He told the truth. Now he's paying for it." Seconds later, the feed cut out. No trace, no replay, nothing. Just millions of shocked viewers who caught it before it vanished. The fear spread fast. If Melly was being silenced, who was behind it? Was it someone tied to the case, or forces much bigger than a courtroom battle? Suddenly, this wasn't just a trial anymore. It felt like a message. And while Melly sat locked away in silence, the industry around him started moving just as quietly and just as ruthlessly. While Melly sat in silence, the outside world kept spinning, and it was spinning against him. One by one, artists who once called him a brother began pulling away. Features disappeared from streaming platforms overnight. Collaborations got scrubbed without explanation. Even major names who had shouted "Free Melly" in the past went ghost, deleting posts and keeping their distance. PR teams scrambled, labels locked their doors, and executives whispered about damage control. To the industry, Melly had gone from a rising star to radioactive. Nobody wanted to stand next to the storm that was now following his name. For a world built on image, the courtroom breakdown wasn't just a scandal, it was poison. But while the industry was cutting ties, the state was doubling down. Just days later, prosecutors announced they were reassessing the charges, citing newly obtained digital evidence. They didn't say what it was, they didn't say where it came from, but rumors spread fast. Some insiders claimed it came from international sources. Others whispered dark web leaks. A few even pushed wild theories about satellite footage and government surveillance. Whatever it was, one thing was clear. The case wasn't slowing down, it was accelerating. And Melly wasn't just up against prosecutors anymore. He was facing a storm that stretched from the courtroom to the industry, and maybe even beyond. By then, the question wasn't just whether Melly was guilty or innocent. It was whether he even stood a chance against forces this big, this hidden, and this determined to bury him. And with the stage set for a final showdown, the story was ready for one last twist. So, after all the leaks, the letters, the missing footage, and the courtroom breakdown, one question still hangs in the air. Did we just witness a man confessing, or a man crying out for help? Because if Melly's apology was real, then justice is closing in. But if it wasn't, if the rumors of forged evidence, planted witnesses, and shadow networks are even half true, then this case isn't about guilt anymore. It's about survival. And maybe that's why the industry went silent. Maybe that's why names are being erased, footage is disappearing, and evidence is mysteriously found at the perfect moment. Not because Melly's story is over, but because it might only just be beginning. At the end of the day, the trial isn't just about one rapper standing before a judge. It's about the secrets that ripple behind him, the people in power, the networks in the shadows, and the truth that somebody doesn't want told. So the question isn't whether Melly broke down from guilt. The real question is, what happens if he was telling the truth the entire time? Because if that's the case, then the biggest twist of this story hasn't even dropped yet.